In today's video, we're going to be talking about time differences. We hire mainly from Central, Eastern Europe, and Latin America. There's multiple different time zones to be able to hire from. We get questions a lot from clients. Where should they hire from? Does a time zone affect work? What type of structure should they build for teams? And so let's walk through a couple scenarios where we can go through and figure out what makes most sense for each of these individuals. We've got Bob in New York City. He's on Eastern Standard Time. He needs to hire a developer. Then we've got Jessica in Denver. She needs to hire an executive assistant, or EA. She's on Mountain Standard Time. She's 2 hours behind Bob. So Bob, he's hiring a developer. He's totally okay with someone working in Europe 5-6 hours ahead of him and having a little bit of overlap with his team back in the States. He doesn't need full coverage. He doesn't need someone to be on the same time zone as him. This happens a lot in IT roles and also development roles and in general. There's typically some sort of overlap. Eastern Europe, Central Europe have been outsourcing hubs for decades now. And so people are very used to having these types of overlaps with multinational teams. For Bob, what we can do is we could look in a place like Serbia or Poland. They're 6 hours ahead of Bob. And so this would allow him to kind of have that overlap with his team, so they could be working in the morning, completing projects, making progress on sprints, and then his U.S. team could take over and finish the rest of the day as the U.S. wakes up and has their normal working day. This really allows Bob and his team to move twice as fast. Super important for development and programming and coding type of role. This can really add a lot of speed to Bob's company. For a role that Jessica is hiring for, an executive assistant, Jessica may be a little bit more hesitant to have someone 6 hours ahead, time zone wise, from her. And in our experience, having an executive assistant 8 hours ahead of you or 6 hours ahead of you just doesn't really make as much sense. The executive assistant role is so intimate to the founder or the executive that they're supporting. It's best to just be a couple hours ahead or on that same time zone if you can have that. Granted that she's in Mountain Standard Time, she's 2 hours behind the East Coast. Obviously, Europe's not going to work, even if it was Western Europe. It's just not really going to work out for her. When we look at Latin America, there are some options. So in Latin America, there are a lot of different time zones. Argentina is 2 hours ahead of New York, so it doesn't actually fit for this scenario. But if we look at a place like Colombia or Brazil, they're basically on Central Standard Time in the States, right? Like the same time zone as Central Standard Time in the States. So that's an hour ahead of Mountain Standard Time. So for Jessica, hiring an executive assistant would work in this scenario. It would be great for her to be on that same time zone with them or very close to them. And she would see a lot of success with this executive assistant role. Other roles we see on similar time zones are sales reps. So a lot of times what happens with our clients, they like to have sales reps kind of on that same time zone or within a couple of hours because they don't want someone in Europe 6, 7, 8 hours ahead of them making calls. Usually it's just better to have someone on a very similar time zone when you're having them in the sales conversations. It makes it a lot easier for planning. You don't have to use something like World Time Buddy like this to have a bunch of open time zones and go back and forth. Just makes it super easy to just be in the same time zone, so you don't even have to think when you're trying to schedule calls or set appointments. A little tool that you can use for time zones, if you decide to go the route of Bob and have developers 6 hours ahead of you, is World Time Buddy, right? So we have New York, the main location. Then we have Belgrade, Serbia, which is 5 hours ahead of the East Coast for now. In 2 days, they're going to move forward by 1 hour. So they'll go back to being 6 hours ahead of New York, like normal, how they are through the majority of the year, For Denver, 2 hours behind New York, right? And then we can see Bogota is just 1 hour ahead of Denver. So this is an awesome tool to be able to kind of go through the time zones and get some clarity around the different time zones. Making a decision on what time zone you want to hire from really comes down to what type of company you want to build. Sometimes companies want everyone on that same time zone. They just want everyone together, make it simple, make it easy. Others, usually IT, software companies, those types of companies, want to have split time zones. They want more coverage throughout the day. So here at Zabota, what we like to do, since we have a team in Europe, what they're doing is a lot of recruiting, a lot of sourcing, and they're starting late in the morning in Europe and extending through early evening in Europe. So that's like mid-afternoon in the East Coast of the States. After that, that sales team is taking over and working that US full day. So we're getting a lot of coverage for working. It allows us to move twice as fast compared to if everyone was just stuck in that same time zone. That's a good strategy. It works for a lot of different companies. Not all business models it'll work well for, but whichever time zone you choose, just think about how it's going to affect that company. If you have any questions about hiring from Central, Eastern Europe, and Latin America, let me know in the comments below. If you want to learn more about how Zabota could possibly help you, book a call by clicking the link in the description, and we'll be happy to chat. Thanks.